Hey everybody, welcome to the Real Difference Film School. I'm Josiah, your host, and I'm here with a really special guest at the Imaginarium Arts and Entertainment convention here in Louisville, Kentucky. And yeah, so if you've been hanging around Real Difference Film School for a while, you know that we support independent films and independent filmmaking, and more importantly than that, the filmmakers, the incredibly talented people behind them. So I'm sitting here with actor and newly director as well. We'll be talking about that, I'm sure, during the interview as well. But Silvio Wolf Busch, Silvio, welcome to the show, welcome to the interview.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So how did you get into filmmaking? I guess we'll start there. It's probably a good place to start, like in acting and filmmaking. How did you get started in all this?
Well, into filmmaking, I stumbled kind of as a byproduct in a way, because I mean, my beginnings in the film world was as a stuntman. You know, I used to live in California.
Really?
I was training horses there, and I ended up stumbling, into some film sets, doing some usually horse-related stunt work, and it wasn't until I worked on this film Cowboy Up with Daryl Hannah, Bo Hoskins, Morgan Fairchild, Kiefer Sutherland, a bunch of big names, and did some stunt work for them, and I ended up being appointed by the director as a stand-in double for one of the stars.
Wow.
Never done this before, right? And I ended up rehearsing opposite Daryl Hannah.
Wow.
And I had so much fun with it, I actually totally forgot that I wasn't really even an actor, right? I was a stuntman.
Yeah.
So, but I had a blast, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
And she was so complimentary with my presence, my talent, and she encouraged me to pursue it. So that was it. That's how it was born.
Wow.
And of course, you start pursuing film acting. Initially, you will do a lot of it in independent films, smaller projects, local directors, that kind of stuff to get your feet wet, which is a great way of doing it, by the way. I mean, seek out some talented local filmmakers, smaller projects, nothing huge, to get your feet wet. And quickly, what happens then when you work on these projects, you end up, holding the boom when you're not on camera, hey, can you press record on the camera? Could you fix that light over there? And before I knew it, I was doing a heck of a lot more than just act. Right? And through that, I started, becoming more and more interested in the, in the making of the film rather than just being in front of the camera. And I did a little bit of, cinematography and a little bit of sound work, and eventually the idea was created in my head. I have accumulated a pretty decent wealth of knowledge now, in addition to having gotten bigger and bigger roles in film. Ended up being cast in bigger SAG productions alongside some pretty famous people, which was amazing. But I thought, I have seen so much done, like so many film projects kind of being born and being made and being worked on. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, most of them will never see the light of day. It's just it is, they fall by the wayside. And those that do come out, they even are shown, not all of it is quality. Unfortunately, you have to, really kind of pick, your favorites out of this big pool of projects.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, I can stand here or sit here and complain about it, and say, that was awful. This is terrible. What were they thinking? Or I can make a difference.
Yeah.
I can contribute somehow to it. Whether or not it's producing a film that I feel strongly about, and put my knowledge and my drive into it, or even direct it. So, and what kind of project would I want to direct? Well, to start out with, how about one of your own? Because if you screw it up, hey, at least it's your project you're screwing up, right? It's not that I will wanting to screw it up, but it's I thought, okay, if I'm gonna get my feet wet as a director, let's do it with my own project, and I know you know all about that, and it's a daunting task, despite of the fact that it's your own material, right? But I hesitated and I procrastinated, with the idea. And it was my wife, actually, it was Tori, that at one point said, Silvio, at your pace, you're never going to direct. Because you're always going to find, well, I'm not ready for this there, or I don't know enough about this. You're like, you're not going to be able to direct until you do what? You start directing.
Done is better than perfect.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know, and so, you know, you're right. You know, let's just get started. And I did, you know, and I picked a project of mine that I felt very strongly about, that I really wanted to tell the story. And I felt that me having written it, there's no better person to tell that. And now I can, for the first time, use all that knowledge that I built up over the years and put it to test. You know, really kind of figure out, am I even cut out for this? Am I even good enough to be a director? Right? Can I handle all these people, all these personalities? You know, can I get them all under one umbrella? You know, like and get them co-aligned and get them to work as a team, because that is really the only thing that makes the magic happen. You know, is teamwork. There's no place for individuals in that. Only individual talents combined into a team.
Well said. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but do tell me more about this film that was your directorial debut, which I had the honor of playing a small role in bringing to life.
Awesome.
Right back at him. So you guys might not know this, but we're actually also good, like personal friends. Have had the honor of working with Silvio on many projects as well, including Orphan Courage as well. So yeah, obviously another reason why I'm honored to have you.
If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. It's awesome too.
Absolutely, and keep your eye out for this film. So, Last Mission, your directorial debut. First off, can we hear like a quick synopsis?
All right. So it's a World War II story. Okay. Why? Well, I've been studying on that since I was 12 years old, so it's kind of a pet peeve. You know, I've been really, really, really into it, and I have hundreds of books on the subject matter at home. So I know a lot about it, and I always wanted to write about it. So, but I was hesitant. Again, you know, because I thought, well, you know, because I know so much about it already and I've studied up so much, I don't want to rehash a tale that's already been told, especially if it's been told numerous times. Like D-Day has been told so many times. The Holocaust has been covered, you know, gazillions of times. Not that it shouldn't be continue to be covered. And I have things in the works on that one too. But, you know, I really wanted to get into a part of World War II that has not been covered much.
Yeah.
That hits home with me personally, because I am German, if you haven't figured that yet. So I was my parents were war children. You know, they grew up, you know, in the Third Reich under Hitler. And they went through it all, you know, like they saw Germany rise, you know, to glory and power, and they saw it disintegrate, you know, and then they were like picking up, you know, like leftovers out of the rubble, you know, in 1945, where everything around them was bombed to hell. My hometown of Leipzig, my parents then could see Dresden burn. Wow. On the horizon, you know, after it was bombed by the Allied bomber formations. So anyway, and it was this very, very end of the war, you know, like immediately preceding the final surrender of Germany, that not much has been talked about, you know. It was those few days of limbo, which also my grandpa, you know, kind of told me a lot about, where Germany was defeated technically, you know. I mean, it was just the last days of May, leading up to May 8th, the victory in Europe Day, and it's the plight of the soldiers, the German soldiers and the German civilians, after Hitler committed suicide and pretty much left the country, you know, to fend for its own, what was left of it. You know, what was going on in the minds of these soldiers and these civilians? You know, the Russians were approaching. They were taking no prisoners. I mean, they were raping, pilfering, you know, and robbing, you know, their way across Germany. And the only thing, you know, that the Germans really had left, you know, to do, like their last mission, you know, civilian or soldier, really was to get away from the Russian onslaught. You know, the hatred, you know, and the violence that they were bringing across Germany, partially in retaliation for, you know, some of the, war destruction that Germany caused on Russia. So they got, you know, on tracks, any vehicle they could cling to, and they headed westwards. And they headed toward the River Enns in this particular story, down in Austria, because that's where the southern demarcation line was with the American troops, the U.S. forces, and there were several stories of, you know, like these refugee tracks consisting of soldiers from all branches and civilians and men, women, children, old people, everything. I mean, dogs, the few belongings they could take with them. A lot of it was left behind because it was too heavy to carry. But what was their mindset at this point? A defeated people, a defeated army. They're heading toward the only force where they expected or hoped for a little bit of mercy and a little bit of goodwill, which was the Americans primarily. Partially also because the Americans and the British and the Canadians and the Germans, they weren't that far apart from each other. They looked a lot alike. They had a lot of the same ethnic background. There was many German Americans, German British, or German Canadians even, that they had relations and they had a lot of similarities. So they were heading for that, but it was an uncertain time, and how would they be welcomed? Would they be thrown in prison? Would they be starved? Would they be tortured? I mean, there was a lot of things going through their heads. And then all the different aspects of personalities on these tracks. There were some that were, ardent Nazis, and of course, they were sweating bullets. There's hell to pay because they may have been involved, with atrocities or things, criminal acts that they knew they're going to have to answer for. But the vast majority of them were soldiers that, fought the best they could for what they believed, was right for their country. And in the end, it wasn't the country and it wasn't the Führer. In the end, it was fighting, for their families and for each other.
So what would you say your experience as actor-director was like? So obviously as an actor, the role is going to be a lot different. Was it a big adjustment for you? Like what was that whole kind of switching over process like for you?
Well, initially, the task of acting and directing seemed very daunting to me. It was like, oh my gosh, am I going to be good enough to do wearing both hats? Same time. Now, as I told you earlier in conversation, one of my biggest inspirations is Mel Gibson, one of the most phenomenal actor-directors that I know, and seeing him in the behind-the-scenes footage, of his fantastic, movies that he has made so far, he has so much passion and he's so into it, and he's so much into every detail. And I see him when he directs. I see his facial expressions. He's acting alongside his actors, even when he's not actually in the scene. But I've also seen him in the scene, and then he's like doing his thing, and then he like, cut, and he runs over the camera, and I'm like, I wonder if I can do this, and if I'm, good enough for that, because I hate to compare myself to Mel Gibson, he's a giant. But
Mel, if you're watching.
But oddly enough, once I was on set, acting, directing was not just easy for me and fun. But it was empowering. Why? I mean, trying to kind of keep it relatively short. It's like, I found out that as an actor-director, you get to direct your scene from within the scene. That is incredible. If you're there right in the middle, and you're surrounded by your actors, and you feed off their vibes, things that you don't necessarily capture when you're on the video village on the production monitor or just standing outside of the scene, right? No, you're right there with them. You can feel them. You can almost hear their heartbeat, right? And you feed off that, and it's like, as an actor, and director in the scene, to me, I know, I can make quick adjustments really fast instead of me walking in and making, a big deal out of it all. I just, make quick adjustments. Sometimes I even make adjustments of the positioning of the actor, right from within the scene, I'll whisper, and I look like, dude, this is different. And that's incredible, that gives you an insight and a perspective that you normally never get if you direct a scene from the outside. So it was fantastic, and it was much, much easier than I thought. I did my thing from the camera, and if there was anything wrong, I had the scriptie or my cinematographer, kind of take over the mantle of director on the outside,
right.
And kind of help me out here and there. But most of the time, would just say, all right, let's do it, action, do my thing. Then, I would run over to the video village, check the footage, like, yeah, awesome, let's move on. Or, no, let's rearrange this real quick. And then, back into the scene. All right, ready? Okay, let's do it. And it worked really, really well.
That's awesome.
It was a lot of fun. And I can only recommend to, if you are an actor that has directing, not inspiration, what do you call it? Aspiration, thank you. then, you know, like, and you have the opportunity to do that, you know, I want you to look back, you know, and remember, you know, these words that I said, like, you know, like how phenomenal a perspective this is going to give you. So it's the coolest thing, you know, ever. I mean, I never knew, you know, really how amazing it was until I really did it. I had an idea watching somebody like Mel Gibson, but now I know why he's so excited about it, why he loves it so much, because he has already found out, you know, what a treasure it is to be able to direct from within, you know, your own scene.
And from being on set, like, I can attest to that too. Like, you really seemed in your element. You were able to really, I mean, like you were saying as well, shaping the scene from the inside and the outside at the same time.
Right.
You know, it lends a completely different perspective, and at the end also artistic product, by being able to have that kind of influence over the film.
And also, like, you know, more in a technical aspect, you know, like a lot of times I've been on many sets where I found out that the director had they were notorious for cutting too early. It drives us actors mad. Right, and it shoots. You shoot yourself in the foot as a director. You know, if you cut too early, no, don't do that. So if, of course, you are the director and you're in the scene with your actors, you make the decision.
You can just keep it going.
You just keep it going. You know, like if there's a good vibe coming, you know, even though it's not even part of the scene anymore, maybe it's the dialogue is already over. Technically, the scene should be cut, but there's something coming from your actors that you feel, oh, keep this going. This is powerful stuff. You know, I'm not going to miss out on that. So I had, you know, like sometimes when we were filming, you know, I had people like, they were waiting for me to say cut. You know, like, and I could, you know, from the corner of my eye, I could see like the head movement, like, what's going on? Did he say cut? Whatever. You know, and then I was like, all right, that's good. All right. Cut.
Speaking of non-interrupting powerful stuff, I'm afraid we have to like kind of wrap it up. I actually have to head to a panel now, so hopefully we'll bring you some content from that here in a moment too. But we'll have to continue this because I haven't gotten through hardly any questions here. Oh, yeah. So thank you so much for joining me, buddy. So appreciate hearing your take on this. Like, I mean, it's just gold. So thank you so much for joining me, and yeah, catch you guys
anytime.
on the flip side.
See you guys.
Awesome, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.